Chapter 29-27 Waking Up After 10 Years. Chapter 1 Waking Up After 10 Years. Jinhai City, Business District. Many high-rise buildings and all kinds of luxury goods shops occupied both sides of the street. Young men and women dressed in fashionable clothing also walked the street in groups of twos and threes. Occasionally, one could also see luxurious, levitating supercars roaring through the street, earning the envious and yearnful gazes of many young men and women. Despite today being a rest day, people crowded the business district's central plaza. At this time, dozens of handsome men and women could be seen holding various street performances by one of the central plaza's fountains. These performers either danced or sang. Paired with the use of vivid, holographic images, they managed to attract a lot of spectators. Among them, the most popular performer was a female singer singing God's Domain's theme song. The singer also paired her performance with the holographic promotional video for God's Domain's latest expansion pack War of Worlds. The video depicted the world passage activating and the soldiers of two worlds clashing frenziedly on the battlefield. Tens of millions of people fought on the battlefield, and all sorts of flying ships and war weapons could be seen deployed to battle. Everyone was fighting desperately for the survival of their respective worlds. The spectacular scene caused the spectators' blood to boil in excitement. Meanwhile, along with the ending of the song, the advertising screen hovering above the central plaza also began broadcasting today's news. Greetings, everyone. This is the God's Domain morning news. Greetings, everyone. This is the God's Domain morning news. Our first news of the day comes from our city's Shadow Guild. Shadow has already announced that it will be merging into the Super Guild World Domination effectively today, becoming World Domination's 73rd affiliated guild. Along with this merger, Shadow will also welcome Gu Iran as its new guild leader. Gu Iran is one of World Domination's rising stars, and he expresses that Shadow will make far better progress than it has before under his command. In addition, Gu Iran states that Shadow will, under World Domination's support, establish a new city in the Flame Woodland located outside the World Train, and he welcomes everyone with ambition to apply for the guild. He also promises to bring Shadow into the ranks of first-rate guilds as soon as possible. Next, a quick news from our city. Dazzle Wave Workshop, one of the top 3 workshops in Fenglin City, will be signing a contract with Wu Xiaoxiao, the champion of our city's talented rookie tournament, on August 26, 2139. The head of Dazzle Wave has stated that he would use the best resources available to nurture Wu Xiaoxiao. Not only will Wu Xiaoxiao receive a guaranteed annual salary of 100 million credits, but she will also receive the best legacies Dazzle Wave has to offer. Last but not least, she will also receive a fully customized epic set equipment to aid her in reaching Tier 5 as soon as possible. When the people in the plaza heard the news report on Wu Xiaoxiao, many of them revealed looks of envy. In the current age, if one were to ask which profession would earn one a fortune the quickest, 9,999 out of 10,000 people would answer being a professional player in God's Domain. As those who answered otherwise, they needed to get their heads checked. Meanwhile, Shifeng also stood among the crowd of people in the plaza. Currently, he wore a casual, light blue t-shirt and a pair of grey sweatpants. His hair was in a mess, and his face looked slightly pale. At first glance, he looked like someone who frequently worked overtime. As Shifeng stared at the news bulletin hovering above the plaza, a bitter smile formed on his face as he muttered, "Fate really knows how to mess with people." Shifeng was at a loss for words as he stared at the time displayed on the news bulletin. Although this was a time period similar to the one he remembered, the news report he heard caused his heart to grow restless. Previously, he had returned 10 years into the past, created his own guild, and developed it into the #1 guild in God's Domain. He had even gotten promoted into a Tier 6 sword god, an achievement he had only dreamed of accomplishing before he went back in time. Afterward, to protect his own world, he had even set foot into a new world and continued his fight there. 10 years. 10 whole years. He had relived 10 whole years. Yet, as if playing a joke on him, fate had suddenly returned him to his original world, the world he resided in before he got reincarnated. Everything in this world was just like before he had reincarnated. After wasting 10 years of his life struggling for Shadow, not only did he get removed from the guild, but he even had his account deleted. Now, He was nothing but an unemployed, 32-year-old uncle. The only fortunate thing was that he wasn't completely broke. At the very least, he had a villa situated in a high-class residential district and 5 million credits in the bank, so he shouldn't have any trouble getting by for the short term. When Shifeng first returned to this world, he had trouble telling which world was real, and which world was a dream. If he were to say that his current world was the real one, it didn't make sense for him to remember everything about the previous world so vividly. Even now, he could recall the many events, both big and small, that had taken place in the previous world. Moreover, after he returned, although his 32-year-old body was still as terrible as he remembered it to be, his mental state was surprisingly excellent. The level of control he could exert over his physical body far exceeded that of the average neutralizing Grandmaster. In fact, he was already nearing the mental strength master standard. If he were to say that his current world was a dream, then it didn't make sense why he couldn't wake up from this dream. Not to mention, the hidden injuries he had sustained during his early years of training still remained on his body. The only thing that confused Shifeng was the sword scar left over his heart. From what he could recall, he had never sustained an injury at that location, let alone getting cut by a sword there. This would definitely be a fatal injury. Moreover, in the real world, even if fights occurred, people would fight using their fists and legs, they wouldn't use weapons at all. Most importantly, whenever Shifeng tried to remember how he got this scar, he would get a massive headache that made him feel as if his brain was about to explode. Because of this, he had no choice but to abandon thinking of this matter. The reason why my brain can't withstand that segment of my memories is probably because my mental strength is too weak. So long as I raise my mental strength, I should be able to recall that memory, Shifeng deduced based on his past experiences. There were times when he would also experience headaches when trying to learn complex legacies in God's domain. However, once he raised his concentration standard to a sufficiently high level, he no longer experiences those headaches. Although Shifeng couldn't tell whether this world was real or fake right now, he felt that the scar over his heart should be of significant importance. It might even be related to his return to this world. It seems I'll have to find opportunities to improve my mental strength. Shifeng began carefully planning his future actions. The loss of his memories made Shifeng feel extremely uncomfortable. If he didn't properly look into it, he wouldn't even be able to sleep well. While Shifeng was seated on a stone bench in the plaza and pondering how he should go about improving his mental strength, a middle-aged man wearing a suit and leather collar ran up to him in a hurry. Meanwhile, this middle-aged, tan-skinned man was none other than Blackie, the person who had fought alongside Shifeng in God's domain for many years. However, compared to the Blackie in the previous world, the Blackie in front of Shifeng had been stuck working in shadows management for the past 10 years. Hence, he had already gained a rotund belly and a chubby face. If the Blackie in the other world found out about this, he would probably have a mental breakdown. "Brother Feng, I finally found you. What have you been up to recently?" Blackie asked as he looked at Shifeng with a reproachful gaze. "You never answered any of my calls, and you weren't home when I went to look for you. For a moment, I even thought you wanted to take the short way out. You really worried me. Lan Hailong might be garbage, but there's no need for you to despair, Brother Feng. Don't forget that your skills still remain. Even if you've lost your account, you can easily retrain one with your skills. There's no need to do any stupid things." Looking at Blackie's anxious expression, Shifeng faintly smiled and said, "Relax, I'm fine. How about you? Is everything all right on your side? The newly designated guild leader will probably try to replace old employees like you. Now that you're out here during work hours, he'll have even more reason to fire you. I'm just a small-time manager in the guild. There's no way that genius from world domination will bother with me," Blackie said, clicking his tongue. Then, he nonchalantly continued, "What do you plan on doing next, Brother Feng? You don't have a character in God's domain anymore, so you can't make use of your skills. How about I have some of the guild's experts power level you? It won't take more than a month for you to reach level 100, tier 3. Afterward, you can find an opportunity to take revenge on Lan Hailong." God's domain had already been in operation for 10 years now. So long as a player had someone to power level them, and the player themselves had sufficient skills, reaching Tier 3 within a short period was a piece of cake. In fact, many workshops in God's domain were providing such power leveling services. After all, there were many players in God's domain who had failed to complete an epic quest and had their accounts crippled. So, getting Shifeng to a high level wasn't a problem at all. The only problem would be getting him weapons and equipment that rivaled the ones he previously used. No need for all that trouble, Shifeng said, shaking his head. The most recent expansion pack is starting soon. I heard that once it takes effect, players who used to own a level 150, Tier 3 character or above can take the system's trial and get directly promoted to level 100, Tier 3. I'll just take that route instead. I guess you're right. Blackie nodded in agreement after recalling this matter. This is a much faster way of leveling up. When that time comes, I'll have someone prepare you a set of level 100 epic equipment. No need to hurry for that, Shifeng said. Didn't you tell me before that Jin High University's God's Domain Academy is recruiting instructors before? Now that God's Domain had already become a part of everyone's lives, most universities in the world would provide specialized education on God's domain to students. These education programs were funded by the various corporations, and they were meant to nurture students into elite and expert players. These students would then become the new blood that supported these various corporations. Meanwhile, Jin High City's Jin High University was one such university. Jin High University had even received funding from an international corporation this year, hence it expanded its God's Domain education program. And because of this expansion, the university was now offering high salaries to recruit God's Domain's experts to serve as instructors or trainers. To Shifeng, this was definitely an opportunity he could capitalize on. The resources international corporations had access to far surpassed the likes of ordinary guilds. They even had access to resources that couldn't be acquired by the general public. Although Shifeng currently had 5 million credits in the bank, without the necessary connections, he wouldn't be able to purchase S-rank nutrient fluids to improve his physical fitness and recover his vitality. However, if he became an instructor at Jin High University's God's Domain Academy, he might gain a connection to purchase S-rank nutrient fluids. If he could mend the hidden injuries in his body and improve his physical fitness, he would have an easier time improving his mental strength standard. Otherwise, with his current body's standard, he wouldn't be able to improve his mental strength even if he trained for another 20 years. That's correct. The Academy has even sent people over hoping that some of our frontline experts can work part-time there. But the Guild's frontline experts are too busy. They barely have enough time nurturing the Guild's newcomers, let alone other people, Blackie said, nodding. Then, he curiously asked, Brother Feng, do you plan on going there? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I'm thinking of paying it a visit, Shifeng said, not bothering to hide his intentions. After all, he currently had nothing noteworthy in his possession. Blackie sighed in relief upon hearing Shifeng's words. Then, he said, all right, I'll get things straightened out for you, then. When the time comes, all you need to do is report directly at the Academy. 2 days later, on the 24th of August, 2139. Shifeng, in his tracksuit, arrived back at his starting point 10 years later. Chapter 2928, Starting Over Again. Chapter 2, Starting Over Again. When Shifeng entered the school grounds of Jin High University, he found that the place looked the same as 10 years ago. He could feel the air of youthfulness all around and hear the insects reverberating under the scorching sun. Although the new semester had yet to start, many students could already be seen doing either self-studies in the library or participating in club activities. The small plaza by the university's entrance was especially crowded due to the registration booths set up there. Many university applicants accompanied by their parents could be seen lining up in front of these booths. Meanwhile, among the many registration booths, the one for the God's Domain Academy was, without a doubt, the most popular. There were easily over 100 applicants waiting for their turn in front of the booth. None of the other registration booths could come close to competing with this number. While Jin High City might be an inconspicuous third-tier city, Jin High University was one of the more well-known universities throughout the country as its God's Domain Academy had produced many talents. In the current era where God's Domain had become a part of human life, Jin High University's performance would naturally attract the attention of many. Not to mention, Shadow, one of Jin High City's top 4 workshops, also originated from Jin High University. This contributed even more to the university's fame. Moreover, for those who successfully get accepted into the God's Domain Academy, not only would they receive the guidance and nurturing rivaling what large guilds provided, but they would also get to enjoy the freedom of independent players. After graduation, students of the academy were also almost guaranteed to become internal members of large guilds, receiving priority nurturing and a salary far surpassing white-collared workers. And if one was fortunate enough to pass the God's Domain Professional League selection during their school years, one could also become a professional fighter, an entity akin to a celebrity. Meanwhile, professional fighters were existences that even super guilds sought to recruit. This was also one of the primary sources God's Domain's various superpowers recruited their internal members from. After all, even the various superpowers were limited in their ability to recruit talented people. It was inevitable for the various superpowers to let some talents slip out of their radar. Hence, the God's Domain Professional League was an excellent way to catch these talents. After Shifeng strolled around the familiar yet foreign school compound, he made his way to the Academic Affairs Office to register himself. And because of Blackie's strong recommendation, Shifeng got to bypass the many troublesome reviews and got directly hired as a junior instructor of the God's Domain Academy. Instructor Sure, our God's Domain Academy imposes much less restriction compared to that of rival academies, especially when it comes to our instructors. We do not look at a person's academic qualifications or history, we only look at their current abilities. Lin Yaoyu, the God's Domain Academy's director and a beautiful woman in her mid-20s, explained to Shifeng. You might be Shadow's ex-guild leader, but we cannot provide you with any special treatment. You will be treated like any other junior instructor. You won't need to hold lectures every day, you only need to hold 2 lectures a week. When you plan to hold a lecture, you need to notify one of the counselors 1 day in advance, then the counselor will make the necessary arrangements for you. As to whether the students are willing to attend your lectures, that will depend on your personal charm. If it were the past God's Domain Academy, someone of Shifeng's stature would have been given the VIP treatment. However, that was no longer the case now. Now that Jin High University's God's Domain Academy had received investments from major corporations, even current guild leaders of second-rate guilds were of little significance to the academy. After all, many guild executives of large guilds were now frantically trying to apply for a position in the academy in the hopes of forming a connection with the academy's investors. If Shifeng weren't Shadow's ex-guild leader, he would have had to go through a series of rigorous tests before he could become an instructor in the God's Domain Academy. Not to mention, even after struggling in God's Domain for 10 years, Shifeng had failed to even reach Tier 4. Only those who had reached Tier 4 could be considered an expert in God's Domain's upper echelons in the current God's Domain. As for Tier 3 experts, they could be found everywhere in God's Domain. At most, these existences could strut around in small kingdoms. In regards to the benefits offered to junior instructors, you will receive a monthly salary of 20,000 credits and free access to the Academy's basic training facilities. While the Academy also has state-of-the-art training facilities and resources, you will have to exchange for those using Academy points. An example of one of the available resources would be the popular S-rank nutrient fluid. Each bottle will cost 1 million points. There are 2 main ways for you to acquire Academy points. The first way is to hold lectures. A junior instructor will receive 10 points for each participating student per lecture, whereas intermediate instructors will receive 20 points, and senior instructors will receive 50 points. The second way is to take in students as apprentices and train them. This is also the quickest method to acquire Academy points. If you can get a willing student to become your apprentice and guide them, every level your apprentice manages to progress in the trial tower will award you with a large amount of Academy points. If your apprentice reaches the expert standard, which is the early stage of the tower's 5th floor, you will be awarded 20,000 points. If your apprentice reaches the 6th floor's early stage, then you will receive 100,000 points. Simultaneously, apprentices also play a role in an instructor's promotion. Only instructors who have successfully guided 3 apprentices to the 6th floor's early stage can become intermediate instructors. Meanwhile, only intermediate instructors and above qualify to exchange for S-rank nutrient fluids. Junior instructors don't have the qualification to do so. Shifeng was a little surprised when he heard Lin Yaoyue's explanation. He didn't think that the current Jin High University had become so wealthy and generous. An intermediate instructor, is it? Initially, Shifeng thought he would have to become a senior instructor at the academy before being qualified to exchange for S-rank nutrient fluids. After all, that was a resource that even master-level fighters had difficulty getting their hands on. In the current market where supply couldn't meet demand, one couldn't get an S-rank nutrient fluid even for the price of 1 million credits per bottle. By the time Lin Yaoyu was done explaining the God's Domain Academy to Shifeng, the two of them had also arrived at the academy's testing area for new students. The God's Domain Academy functioned as a place to nurture talents for God's Domain's various powers, so it was only natural for the academy to take the path of the elite in its education method. Rather than treating its students equally, it would allocate resources to its students depending on their talent and capabilities. After all, the academy had limited resources. Hence, after students registered for the God's Domain Academy, they would have to undergo a test. To put it simply, new students would have to challenge the classical trial tower of God's Domain. This was also the best method to test a person's combat standards. Instructor Luo Tiancheng, this is our new teacher, Instructor Shifeng, Lin Yaoyu said, introducing Shifeng to a bald and robust middle-aged man standing in the testing area. I still have other matters to attend to, so I hope you can introduce Instructor Shifeng to the matters here. No problem, Luo Tiancheng said. Then, glancing at Shifeng, he smiled and continued, Instructor Shifeng and I are old buddies, leave it to me. Hearing this, Shifeng also glanced at Luo Tiancheng, faintly recalling that he was acquainted with such a person in this life. From what Shifeng could remember, Luo Tiancheng was one of Shadow's frontline experts, and he was someone nearly touching upon the half-step refinement realm standard. He was also one of Lan Hailong's trusted aides. Shifeng never thought that the man would come here to become an instructor. Since you're acquaintances, then I'll leave it to you, Lin Yaoyu said, nodding before leaving the testing area immediately. She had no interest whatsoever in the affairs of junior instructors. What she cared more about was the improvement of her own strength. Meanwhile, after Lin Yaoyu left, Luo Tiancheng put on a big grin as he shifted his sights toward Shifeng. Then, in a sarcastic tone, Luo Tiancheng said, Instructor Shifeng. No, I mean Guild Leader Shifeng. I really didn't expect we would meet at this place. I'm even a little surprised to see that our guild's sword magician would fall to the extent of becoming a measly junior instructor at this place. Director Lan will probably cry if he finds out about this. Shifeng did not get angry at Luo Tiancheng's comment. Instead, he calmly said, It's okay. This God's Domain Academy is much better than I thought. Also, aren't you here as well? After having reincarnated twice, Shifeng no longer felt anything toward the rise and fall of his life. At most, he would just have to start from scratch. Although the starting conditions for a new independent player in the current God's Domain were different from when God's Domain first launched, Shifeng had a much better start than other independent players. After all, he got to enjoy the benefits the God's Domain Academy offered. The resources he had access to were much better than most newcomers in the current God's Domain. Don't think of celebrating just yet. Sneering, Luo Tiancheng said, This academy isn't as easy of a place to survive in as you think. Director Lin probably didn't tell you this, but every junior instructor will need to recruit 20 apprentices when the new students officially enroll in the academy. And if you fail to do so before the new semester begins, you'll have to get lost. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. There were currently less than 3 days before the new semester officially began. Most importantly, today was the last day for new students to register and get themselves tested. Hence, after today, the difficulty of recruiting apprentices would increase exponentially. Not to mention, all new students would immediately seek apprenticeship from an instructor as soon as they completed their test. After all, the instructor they chose to apprentice under played a vital role in their subsequent education and development in God's Domain. Otherwise, they would have to rely on attending theoretical classes while playing solo in God's Domain. Moreover, because of the God's Domain Academy receiving investments from major corporations, the academy had also gained many junior instructors. There simply weren't enough students to share between all of these instructors. Meanwhile, Shifeng was nothing but a fired guild leader. He had no connections or resources to speak of in God's domain. He didn't even have his account anymore. And even if he did, he had also only reached Tier 3 during his peak. With practically nothing to his name, how could he possibly compete against the various large guilds' executives in gaining apprentices? Chapter 29-29, Changing Environment. Chapter 3, Changing Environment. Shifeng frowned a little when he heard Luo Tiancheng's words. Lin Yaoyu had left in quite a haste just now, and she had indeed forgotten to mention this important detail to him. Or, to put it in another way, she found it awkward to bring up this condition to Shifeng, hence she left it to Luo Tiancheng, one of Shifeng's old buddies. The main reason why many students were willing to apply to the God's Domain Academy instead of taking the application tests of large guilds and becoming their internal members was because of the academy's instructors. The God's Domain Academy wasn't paying a high price to hire expert players as instructors solely to teach the academy students. Instead, the academy also depended on these expert players to support its students. After all, newcomers to God's Domain would have nothing to their name. They also had nobody to rely on for help. Meanwhile, the academy's instructors were players who had mingled in God's Domain for many years. They were bound to have amassed a wealth of resources in the game, which would help make up for the God's Domain Academy's lack of resources in the game. With the support of expert players, newcomers to God's Domain could not only integrate with the game world quickly, but they also wouldn't have to worry about leveling up or upgrading their equipment. Moreover, in the 6th year of God's Domain's operation, the game had introduced the apprentice system. This system was also the basis for God's Domain to influence universities. Through the apprentice system, expert players could temporarily lower their levels to match that of the players they were helping. The system would even automatically adjust the level and statistics of players' weapons and equipment. This allowed expert players fighting at the front lines to guide new players without having to create a new account. They could also raid dungeons together with new players. Initially, Shifeng had planned to casually teach some techniques in the God's Domain Academy and nothing more. After all, he was someone who had become a Tier 6 god in his other life. The combat standard he could currently exert far exceeded the imagination of measly Tier 3 and Tier 4 experts. Let alone guiding new players, he could serve as an instructor for even Tier 4 players. Unfortunately, his current self had absolutely nothing in God's Domain. Compared to the various large guilds' upper echelons, he would have a much more difficult time persuading new students to come under his wing. This would also explain why Lin Yaoyu had left so hastily. She must have found it awkward to bring up such a matter. As for we do not look at a person's academic qualifications or history, we only look at their current abilities claim Lin Yaoyu made, it was nothing but drivel. Guild leader Shi, you don't look too well, Luo Tiancheng said, laughing when he saw Shifeng frowning. How about I share a few students with you? At least you won't look too bad when you have to leave the academy. Unlike Shifeng, Luo Tiancheng was still a member of Shadow. Meanwhile, through relying on Shadow's fame, he had recruited over 40 apprentices. In terms of apprentice count, he was among the top 10 of junior instructors. Luo Tiancheng had always looked down upon Shifeng. This was because his technique standards were superior to Shifeng, in his opinion. Luo Tiancheng was also confident he was not the slightest bit inferior to Shifeng when it came to talent. The only advantage Shifeng had was his early start in God's Domain. Yet, just because of this early start, he got to become Shadow's guild leader. Meanwhile, the current situation was the best way for Luo Tiancheng to prove that he was superior and that Shifeng was nothing without Shadow's support. It's just a few students. No need to trouble yourself over it, Instructor Luo, Shifeng calmly said as he looked at Luo Tiancheng. No matter what, I am still Shadow's ex-guild leader. I used to instruct experts like you, so I can at least manage this much. After saying so, Shifeng made his way to the testing area. He paid no heed to the grim expression Luo Tiancheng made. Laugh all you want now. You are nothing without Shadow's support. Luo Tiancheng thought as he viciously glared at Shifeng's departing figure. Let's see how I'll laugh at you the day you get kicked out of this place. Meanwhile, over a dozen junior instructors were currently crowded outside the testing hall. These people were either Shadows executives or frontline experts of third-rate guilds. When these junior instructors saw a new student exiting the testing hall, they promptly swarmed the student. Fellow student, I can see that you're very talented. You managed to reach the late stage of the trial tower's 4th floor. You are an extraordinary talent. I am an elder of the Blood Spirit Guild. So long as you become my apprentice, I can guarantee you will get to use dark gold equipment up to level 150. Blood Spirit is nothing but a third-rate guild. Young man, you should join our Wolf Whisper Guild. Wolf Whisper is a second-rate guild. We are many times stronger than a measly third-rate guild. Let alone dark gold equipment, I can get you even epic equipment up to level 150. If you can reach the 6th floor's early stage, I'll even get a level 150 epic weapon for you. In no time at all, over a dozen middle-aged uncles surrounded the young man looking to be around the age of 17 or 18. Every one of them fervently voiced their offers to recruit the boy. Shifeng also took a look at the troubled teenager in sportswear. Reaching the late stage of the trial tower's 4th floor at the boy's age without any prior guidance showed that the boy had good talent. According to the God's Domain Academy's talent ranking system of A, B, C, and D, the boy would be given a ranking of B. He wasn't that far off from reaching the middle stage of the trial tower's 5th floor, which was also the standard of ordinary experts in God's domain. If a first-rate guild provided enough training and resources for the boy, he could become a refinement realm expert in the future. After all, a player's physical and technique development would be at their fastest before the age of 25. After one crossed this age, the speed of their improvement would rapidly fall off. Meanwhile, so long as the boy could become a refinement realm expert, he could become a mainstay of a first-rate guild. If he received sufficient resources, it was highly possible he could become a Tier 4 player in the future. So, it was no wonder why so many junior instructors were fighting for the boy. However, Shifeng did not bother joining in on the fun. Instead, he made his way straight to the testing hall's entrance. Then, he sat down on one of the prepared seats, held up his quantum watch, and projected a holographic white sheet in front of him. Afterward, Shifeng wrote a few words on the white sheet, the words he wrote shocking many of the waiting students in the hall. Even the junior instructors outside the testing hall were dumbfounded when they saw Shifeng's words. On-the-spot guidance. I will help you improve your trial tower performance by 1 stage. Each guidance costs 100,000 credits. I will only teach each person once. First come, first served. Did that instructor go crazy for money? 100,000 credits. I can live 4 years without working with that money, but it's not a bad deal if he can help improve my result by 1 stage. The test results affect the leveling resources the Academy gives us, after all. If I can reach the trial tower's late stage, I'll get a B rank evaluation. Many of the new students present were slightly tempted by Shifeng's advertisement. This was especially true for students who had reached the 4th floor's middle stage. After all, this was the dividing line between B rank and C rank students. Meanwhile, not only would B rank students get a 30% discount for using the Academy's resources, but they would also receive 12 bottles of A rank nutrient fluid each year. In the outside world, a bottle of A rank nutrient fluid was sold for 10,000 credits. It was not something ordinary people could afford to drink. Even middle-income families could only afford to feed their children B and C rank nutrient fluids, which cost 1,000 credits and 400 credits respectively. Meanwhile, 12 bottles of A rank nutrient fluid was equivalent to 120,000 credit. Not to mention, there was also a 30% discount for school resources. This meant that B rank students could purchase A rank nutrient fluids for only 7,000 credits per bottle. If Shifeng's claim was true, then this was a worthwhile transaction. In no time, a lovely girl with her hair tied into pigtails approached Shifeng with curious eyes. Then, she asked, "Instructor, is what you say true?" Meanwhile, along with this female student's appearance, many other students and instructors turned to look in Shifeng's direction. This was because this female student was Wu Lingling, one of the most talented students among this class of freshmen. She was also the younger sister of Wu Xiaoxiao, the God's Domain Academy's strongest talent. Even though Wu Lingling was only 16 this year, the God's Domain Academy had gone out of its way to send her a direct invitation. Currently, she had already reached the early stage of the trial tower's 5th floor, and her performance was not much inferior to Wu Xiaoxiao's past performance. However, before Shifeng could speak up, Luo Qiancheng, who had enough of Shifeng's arrogance, suddenly walked over and said, "Miss Wu Lingling, don't fall for this person's trickery. He is nothing but a junior instructor who had come to work here for the first day. He was also only a Tier 3 player at his peak. His claim of improving your performance by one stage in one teaching session is something not even Tier 4 experts dare make. You should know yourself how difficult it is to improve your result in the trial tower. That is something that requires continuous effort over a long period. He will be getting kicked out of the academy soon because he doesn't have enough apprentices under him. He's just trying to make a quick buck off of you before leaving." Upon hearing Luo Qiancheng's words, many of the new students present nodded in agreement. They had to train hard every day and study the battle videos of experts to reach their current standard. Meanwhile, a person's combat standard became increasingly harder to improve the further they progressed. It wasn't something that could be accomplished within a day. Not to mention, Shifeng was nothing but a Tier 3 player. How could he possibly accomplish something that not even Tier 4 players could? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In the blink of an eye, the students initially interested in Shifeng's offer gave up on their thoughts. Seeing this, Luo Qiancheng looked toward Shifeng and revealed a delighted smile. However, just as Wu Lingling was about to give up and leave, Shifeng calmly smiled and said, "Right, I forgot to write a sentence here. If you don't make any improvements, I won't charge you anything." Chapter 29-30. Tired of living? Chapter 4, Tired of living? Shifeng did not speak loudly, and the expression on his face remained calm. However, as if his voice carried some kind of magic power, the many students in the testing hall found themselves inadvertently turning their heads toward Shifeng. Even Wu Lingling, who was about to turn around and leave, halted her footsteps, her eyes full of surprise. "You won't charge anything? Instructor, are you telling the truth?" For Wu Lingling, 100,000 credits wasn't a significant amount of money. This was because her elder sister Wu Xiaoxiao earned a lot of money through God's Domain, and the occasional pocket money she received from her elder sister amounted to tens of thousands. And through saving this money, Wu Lingling had already accumulated over 1 million credits by now. Previously, Wu Lingling had only thought about leaving because she thought Shifeng was a scammer. However, Shifeng had declared that he wouldn't take any fees if she didn't make any improvements. If Shifeng was someone without abilities, he definitely wouldn't dare make such a claim. Not to mention, Shifeng was indeed an instructor of the God's Domain Academy. At this time, even Luo Qiancheng was surprised by Shifeng's claim. He never thought that Shifeng would take such decisive action. However, Luo Qiancheng knew better than anyone of Shifeng's combat standards. Shifeng was someone who hadn't even reached the refinement realm. This meant that he couldn't even exert subtle control over his physical body. So, what qualifications did Shifeng have to teach others? Although Shifeng could provide some pointers by relying on his 10 years of combat experience, the points he could give were mostly specialized in fighting monsters. At most, he could teach the students here the techniques players could employ when fighting against other players. However, these experiences wouldn't be of much use in the trial tower. This was because the trial tower tested the players themselves. Players needed to develop their combat standards to a certain extent to clear the tests in the trial tower. After taking these factors into account, Luo Qiancheng concluded that Shifeng intended to take a gamble. After all, if it was a talent like Wu Lingling, the specialized knowledge Shifeng provided might just be enough to help the girl get from the 5th floor's early stage to the 5th floor's middle stage. Then, if Shifeng succeeded in his gamble, he would instantly attract the attention of the other new students. Of course, if Shifeng's bet failed, he would solidify his identity as a scammer in the new students' eyes. At that time, he would have no hope of remaining in the God's Domain Academy. Noticing that Shifeng's words had tempted many of the new students present, Luo Tiancheng looked at Shifeng and smiled, saying, "Instructor Shi, you're not fit to be an instructor if you entice students in such a manner. You might not gain any money if your students don't improve, but you don't stand to lose anything, either. At most, you can just blame your students, saying that they failed to learn the essentials, hence they failed to improve, and that it isn't your teaching that has a problem. In contrast, if a student coincidentally makes a breakthrough in the trial tower, wouldn't you make a lot of money?" Upon hearing Luo Tiancheng's words, many of the students also noticed the problem in Shifeng's offer. "So, Instructor Luo, are you saying that I'm being unfair to these students?" Shifeng said, smiling as he glanced at Luo Tiancheng. "In that case, do you have any brilliant ideas to share?" "I dare not offer any brilliant ideas. I just feel that as an instructor, you shouldn't be playing such word games with your students," Luo Tiancheng said. When he saw that Shifeng remained calm even after he had exposed the man's ploy, he couldn't help but feel a little strange. Even so, he still provocatively suggested, "Since you are so confident in your teaching, Instructor Shi, it shouldn't be difficult for you to help all of your students make improvements in the trial tower, right?" Wu Lingling was one of the best talents the God's Domain Academy had welcomed this semester. If Shifeng got lucky, it was indeed possible for Wu Lingling to achieve a breakthrough after listening to his guidance. However, it would be a different story if Shifeng had to help multiple students achieve a breakthrough. The sun would be rising from the west tomorrow if he managed to accomplish such a feat. If anyone else was standing in Luo Tiancheng's place right now, they might just allow Shifeng to bet on his luck. However, Luo Tiancheng wouldn't. He wanted to cut off all of Shifeng's paths of retreat and watch Shifeng leave the God's Domain Academy in humiliation. Of course, Luo Tiancheng also knew that Shifeng wasn't an idiot. The man definitely wouldn't accept such a suggestion. However, if Shifeng rejected his suggestion, he could simply say that Shifeng had a guilty conscience. In turn, this would cause the new students to present to doubt Shifeng's abilities. However, contrary to Luo Tiancheng's expectations, Shifeng nodded his head and said with a look of realization, "What you said is reasonable, Instructor Luo. This is indeed a good solution. If I only guide a small number of students, the results I achieve can't be used to prove anything. But Instructor Luo, as you can see, no students are coming to sign up for my lesson. How about you help me find 20 students?" Luo Tiancheng was momentarily dumbfounded when he heard Shifeng agreeing to his suggestion. What's going on? Is he taking the initiative to put himself onto the path of no return? Also, aren't I trying to prevent him from recruiting apprentices? Why must I help him find 20 students now? Instructor Luo, you've constantly been casting suspicion over my abilities, yet you aren't even giving me a chance to prove myself. Should such slanderous actions be coming from an instructor? Shifeng said with a grin. Moreover, you are one of the more well-known junior instructors in our academy. You should be acting as a role model. If you question someone, you should first provide the relevant evidence. The new students present nodded in agreement with Shifeng's words. Then, they moved their gazes from Shifeng to Luo Tiancheng. Since Luo Tiancheng doubted Shifeng's abilities, he should provide substantive evidence to prove his claims. Otherwise, he would be doing nothing but create rumors, and who wouldn't know how to create rumors? Fine. I'll help you find 20 students. Luo Tiancheng gnashed his teeth as he glared at Shifeng. Because of Shifeng's words, he had now become a rumor monger in the new students' eyes. But if you fail to help those 20 students improve, you better not blame your failure on the students' lack of ability. Naturally, Shifeng confidently said. In reality, Shifeng had had a headache trying to figure out a way to attract new students. Firstly, not all freshmen had the financial wealth to pay 100,000 credits. Secondly, the freshmen that had yet to seek apprenticeship were already dwindling in number. If he started his performance with only a small batch of students, by the time he finished teaching these students, had them challenge the trial tower, and spread his fame, the other junior instructors present would have long since snatched away the remaining students. By that time, even if there were students who wanted to come under his wing, they wouldn't be able to do so. After all, under the God's Domain Academy's rules, Students who had apprenticed themselves under an instructor were not allowed to change their instructors within a year. However, even for Luo Tiancheng, someone who had worked in the God's Domain Academy for several years, he failed to find more than a few students who were willing to spend the money to take Shifeng's lesson. After all, 100,000 credits was a significant sum of money for most of the students present. This situation rendered Luo Tiancheng speechless. In the end, Luo Tiancheng had to offer to pay for these students to get them to try out Shifeng's lesson. As soon as he went with this option, he quickly managed to bring 20 new students to Shifeng. "Instructor Shi, here are your 20 students," Luo Tiancheng said, glaring at Shifeng. He even took the initiative to transfer 2 million credits to Shifeng. "Now, please begin your performance." Although Luo Tiancheng didn't know why Shifeng behaved so confidently, he refused to believe that Shifeng could create a miracle. After all, even Tier 4 experts were incapable of helping many freshmen achieve a breakthrough in the trial tower through just a brief lesson, let alone a Tier 3 expert like Shifeng. "No problem." Shifeng felt delighted when he saw the transaction notification appearing on his quantum watch. If he combined these 2 million credits with his own 5 million, he wouldn't have to worry about equipment and resources for a while once he re-entered God's domain. Then, he looked toward the 20 students in front of him and said, "I'll be doing a set of aerobics in a moment. All you need to do is learn the whole set. Once I see that you've reached an adequate proficiency, you may challenge the trial tower." As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, the 20 freshmen in front of him instantly became dumbfounded. Aerobics. They had learned aerobics when they were in elementary school, but such exercise was only meant to loosen their muscles. However, they had never heard of aerobics being able to help one improve one's combat standard. "Aerobics. It seems I have underestimated you, Instructor Shi. I am truly ashamed of my ignorance," Luo Tiancheng sarcastically said. At this time, he wanted nothing more than to laugh out loud. "Should I play some music for you as well?" Initially, Luo Tiancheng had thought that Shifeng had prepared some kind of secret technique to turn the tables on him, but aerobics. Shifeng was simply tired of living. It should be known that the God's Domain Academy students were all befitting the title of genius. This was especially true for Wu Lingling. Right now, many first-rate guilds had already put their attention on the girl, confident that she would become a future powerhouse in God's domain. Yet, now, Shifeng was having these geniuses do aerobics like a bunch of elementary students. If news of this spread, Shifeng would become the joke of the city. And if none of his students managed to make any improvements, his image in the academy would also fall into tatters. "That won't be necessary," Shifeng answered. Then, behaving as if he didn't see the awkward looks on the students' faces, he said, "There are 9 movements in the set. I don't need you to execute them to perfection, I just need you to reach a passing standard." Upon hearing Shifeng's words, the 20 students before him couldn't help but look at him in contempt and anger. After all, they were people capable of perfectly executing even God's domain's complex combat techniques, let alone a bunch of measly aerobic movements. Meanwhile, Wu Lingling suddenly felt as if she had been tricked, and her IQ insulted. However, Shifeng did not care about any of the looks of contempt and anger he received. He simply began executing the aerobic movements he mentioned while explaining the movements. The set of aerobics Shifeng currently executed was something he had invented during his other life, and it was used as part of the basic training for Zero Wings newcomers. Meanwhile, anyone in the guild capable of perfectly executing the entire set would be instantly promoted into a core member. Shifeng had created this aerobic exercise using a combination of multiple combat techniques found in God's domain and his understanding of the refinement realm. Although the set's 9 movements appeared ordinary, the execution difficulty increased with each subsequent movement as the minute movements became more and more complicated. One would need to be at the refinement realm standard to perfectly execute all 9 movements. Currently, most of the students in front of him were still stuck on the trial tower's 4th floor. They were merely laymen when it came to manipulating their physical bodies. Needless to say, they were still miles away from rivaling refinement realm experts. Meanwhile, the aerobics he taught would allow them to gradually understand how they should control their bodies. As to the extent to which they could improve, that depended entirely on the individual. After all, the aerobic exercise only provided them with a clear direction to advance Indiana. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Subsequently, after Shifeng completed the first set of aerobics, he had the students start exercising with him. 1 repetition. 3 repetitions. 10 repetitions. As the 20 students began following Shifeng's instructions, the students who arrived in the testing hall afterward couldn't help but be shocked by the sight. This situation caused the 20 students to feel greatly embarrassed. Then, after guiding the 20 students through the aerobic exercise for nearly 3 hours, Shifeng nodded in satisfaction at the sweaty students in front of him and said, "All right, the lesson is over. You can challenge the trial tower now." Chapter 29-31 Frantic Testing Hall. Chapter 5 Frantic Testing Hall. Outside of the testing hall. As soon as Shifeng gave his approval to take the test, the 20 students before him couldn't help but look at him with skeptical and dumbfounded expressions. "That's all, Instructor Shi." When Wu Lingling saw the satisfied look on Shifeng's face, she couldn't help but feel that Shifeng was challenging her intellect. She had already humiliated herself by earnestly doing aerobics that only grade schoolers would do. Although she could indeed sense her body becoming more flexible after the exercise session, that was it. She couldn't sense any improvements to her combat standard and combat techniques at all. In other words, nothing would change even if she challenged the trial tower now. Initially, she had thought that Shifeng would more or less give them some pointers on their combat techniques once they were done with the aerobics. Either that or provide some useful tips to tackle the trial tower. Yet, Shifeng had concluded the training session, just like that. Shifeng was charging them 100,000 credits, for heaven's sake. Yet, all he did was have them exercise their bodies for several hours. That's enough, Shifeng said, smiling when he saw the dumbfounded look on Wu Lingling's face. "It'll cost you more if you want to receive more guidance. Of course, I can give you a 40% discount if you become my apprentice." Shifeng's words instantly flabbergasted Wu Lingling and the 19 other students present. When other students sought apprenticeship under other instructors in the academy, the instructors would eagerly shower them with resources and provide them with personalized instructions. After all, it was in the instructors' best interest to help their apprentices improve as quickly as possible. Yet, when it came to Shifeng, not only did he not offer any resources to his apprentices, but even the lessons he provided came with a price tag. Moreover, he was only offering a pitiful discount of 40% to students who became his apprentices. At this time, even Luo Tiancheng, who had been spectating from the side all this time, couldn't help but give Shifeng a look of admiration. Shifeng was definitely the first instructor in the God's Domain Academy to ever charge their students money for lessons. It would be an absolute miracle if he still managed to gain any apprentices under such a situation. However, Shifeng didn't bother explaining himself. While ignoring the looks of contempt his students were giving him, he pointed at the testing hall and said, "There's not much time left. You might not make it if you don't go test yourselves now." Hearing Shifeng's words, the 20 students turned to look at the large digital clock set up inside the testing hall and found that they were indeed running out of time. Immediately, they ran into the hall and joined the queue to take part in the test, leaving behind Shifeng and Luo Tiancheng. "It's finally time. Let's see how long you can keep pretending to be calm." Luo Tiancheng inwardly laughed as he glanced at Shifeng's calm expression. Originally, Luo Tiancheng thought that Shifeng had an ace hidden under his sleeve. After all, Shifeng used to be Shadow's guild leader. It wouldn't be strange for him to know some secrets that others did not. However, looking at things now, Luo Tiancheng felt that he had been worried for nothing. A measly set of aerobics wouldn't be of any help to a fight even in the real world, let alone the virtual world. All Shifeng was doing was spouting nonsense to grab attention. Time passed by quickly. After 20 minutes had gone by, one of the students Shifeng taught finally got his turn to test himself. The student's name was Meng Zio, and he was one of the freshmen who had already taken part in the test once before. Meng Zio had previously reached the 4th floor's late stage, but he wasn't satisfied with this result. After all, he could only receive a B-rank evaluation with this result, which would net him only 12 bottles of A-rank nutrient fluid per year and a 30% discount to all school resources. However, if he could reach the trial tower's 5th floor, even if it was only the early stage, he would receive an A-rank evaluation. In that case, he would receive 24 bottles of A-rank nutrient fluid per year, which was equivalent to 240,000 credits or a high-ranking white-collar worker's annual salary. Most importantly, he would also enjoy a 40% discount for all school resources and free access to the school's basic training facilities. The difference in benefits might not be significant for wealthy students, but Meng Zio came from an average family. He would be able to afford more resources for himself with the additional discount. After all, God's Domain was unlike any other virtual reality game. It placed heavy importance on a person's physical fitness. Only by having a strong physique in the real world could one let their brain better exhibit its potential in God's Domain. As to why Meng Zio decided to try Shifeng's course, it was simply because Luo Tiancheng had offered to pay the 100,000 credit fee for him. Since the course was free, he naturally had to try it. He didn't have anything to lose even if he tried it. However, if the course worked, then he would have struck the jackpot. After taking a deep breath, Meng Zio anxiously stepped into one of the virtual gaming cabins prepared in the testing hall. That Meng Zio looks like a good seedling. Once he comes out, I should think of a way to get him to become my apprentice, Luo Tiancheng thought as he watched Meng Zio entering the gaming cabin. Despite being only 17 years old and having received no prior training, Meng Zio had managed to reach the 4th floor's late stage. It was an incredible achievement. After all, the boy was only 2 steps away from reaching the recognized expert standard in God's Domain, which was the 5th floor's middle stage. Even after God's Domain had been in operation for 10 years, it still wasn't an easy task for players to reach the recognized standard for ordinary experts in God's Domain. This was especially true for someone as young as Meng Zio. One would need to have great talent to do so. Based on Meng Zio's current performance, if the boy received systematic training, he could become a first-rate expert in no time. He might even have a chance at becoming a refinement realm expert in the future. After all, the various powers of God's Domain had been enhancing and refining their training processes throughout the years. New players joining God's Domain now enjoyed much better training conditions than players who started playing God's Domain 10 years ago. If Luo Tiancheng didn't have his physique and brain activity regress along with age, he could also become a refinement realm expert. At this time, Luo Tiancheng wasn't the only one to have his eyes on Meng Zio. The other instructors present were also figuring out how they could win over Meng Zio. After all, they would receive significant rewards if they could help their respective guilds welcome a young genius. Not to mention, they could also form a connection with a potential expert, which would ensure them a better future. However, even though many of the basic instructors present were looking to rope Meng Zio to their side, none thought about laying their hands on Wu Lingling. After all, Wu Lingling was a genius that first-rate guilds and even super first-rate guilds had set their sights on. The resources she could receive from these existences were leaps and bounds better than what she could receive from second- and third-rate guilds. Wu Lingling would be an utter fool to seek apprenticeship under the basic instructors present. After the instructors outside the testing hall waited for some time, Meng Zio suddenly left his gaming cabin, joy and surprise coloring his face. What's going on? Did he make an improvement? The many instructors shared the same thought when they saw Meng Zio's expression. However, they also couldn't help but doubt their guesses. After all, they had also been present when Shifeng made his students do aerobics. There was no way such simple exercises could help the students make substantial improvements in the trial tower. Just when a few instructors thought to approach Meng Zio and ask the boy about his test result, the screen displaying test scores inside the hall released Meng Zio's result. Meng Zio, 17, Trial Tower, 5th floor's early stage, previous best result was 4th floor's late stage, evaluation. A silence immediately enveloped the area outside the testing hall. Apart from Shifeng, every basic instructor present looked at Meng Zio as if they had just seen a ghost. Impossible. Luo Tiancheng rubbed his eyes and took a look at the screen again, his mind unable to accept what his eyes were seeing. After all, Who could believe that Meng Zio had improved his performance in the trial tower by a stage after doing a few hours of aerobics? However, Meng Zio had no reason to hide his strength and help Shifeng. Most importantly, Luo Tiancheng had personally recruited Meng Zio for Shifeng's lesson. Are you kidding me? How is that possible? Could this be an act? The instructors weren't the only ones dumbfounded at this time. Even the other students present couldn't help but doubt the situation before them and suspect that Shifeng and Meng Zio were in cahoots with each other. Luck. This is just luck, Luo Tiancheng said in denial. Meng Zio probably only failed to reach it before because he wasn't in peak condition. He must have already had the strength to reach the 5th floor before. Everyone hurriedly nodded in agreement when they heard Luo Tiancheng's words, finding his words to be reasonable. After all, not everyone could maintain themselves in peak condition at all times. Small problems such as anxiety could easily affect one's performance. However, shortly after the crowd agreed with Luo Tiancheng's opinion, another person exited their gaming cabin. This person was a girl with an innocent look, and she was also one of the students Shifeng instructed. And just like Meng Zio, the girl wore a look of joy and excitement on her face. I did it. I did it. I finally broke through to B rank. Along with the girl's excited shouts, her score appeared on the central screen. The crowd outside the testing hall instantly fell silent upon seeing the girl's result. Even Luo Tiancheng became thoroughly dumbfounded. Subsequently, as more and more of Shifeng's students completed their test, the crowd outside the testing hall also grew more and more silent. Finally, when all of Shifeng's students completed their tests, the crowd immediately exploded into an uproar. The reason for the uproar was because Wu Lingling, the last of Shifeng's students to complete their test, had surpassed her previous record and reached the 5th floor's middle stage, becoming an officially recognized expert in God's domain. Simultaneously, Wu Lingling had also become the second student after Wu Xiaoxiao, her elder sister, to achieve such a result on the day she enrolled into the God's Domain Academy. Luo Tiancheng's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when he saw Wu Lingling's score. He couldn't help but feel as if he was dreaming. At this time, let alone the spectating crowd, even Wu Lingling herself was still in shock over her achievement. Her mind failed to process how she had made such an improvement. After all, she previously had failed to break through the 5th floor's early stage no matter what she tried. She didn't even have a clue as to what she needed to do to make further progress. Yet, when she challenged the trial tower this time, she had cleared the 5th floor's early stage with surprising ease. Among those present, only Shifeng wasn't surprised by this outcome. The aerobic exercise he formulated wasn't any ordinary aerobics. Instead, it was created based on God's domain's combat techniques and the refinement realm's principles. If one earnestly practiced these movements, not only could one experience the realms of refinement much more easily, but one would also start to notice subtle movements that one normally wouldn't notice. Although one couldn't reach the refinement realm just by practicing this aerobic exercise, once one became familiar with the management of these subtle movements, one could reduce the unnecessary movements in one's actions. In turn, one's movements would flow much more smoothly. Moreover, the effects of these changes would become even more prominent in the virtual world of God's domain. After all, players controlled their virtual bodies with their minds, and their virtual bodies had much fewer physical limitations than their physical bodies. Hence, certain actions and reactions would be amplified, and one could execute movements that one normally couldn't execute. Naturally, this would lead to significant improvements in one's combat standard. In reality, the exercise's real benefits would only start to show themselves if one practiced it over a long period. To be precise, one needed to practice the exercise to the point where one could instinctively reduce their unnecessary movements. The benefits one could gain from practicing the exercise for a few hours were hardly anything noteworthy. Of course, helping someone stuck beneath the trial tower's 6th floor improve their performance by a stage was still entirely possible. Instructor Luo, thank you for your 2 million credits, Shifeng calmly said as he glanced at the dumbfounded Luo Tiancheng. Now that I've already recruited 20 apprentices, I'll be taking my leave. Wu Lingling's shocking performance had worked as a great advertisement. Shifeng had managed to recruit 30 students as his apprentice in less than 5 minutes. Of them, 20 were the students he had taught. Even Wu Lingling had sought apprenticeship under him after hesitating for some time. As a result, Shifeng had met the minimum requirement to remain as one of the God's Domain Academy's basic instructors. Shifeng, don't get too delighted. Luo Tiancheng's complexion was pitch black right now. However, when he looked at Shifeng's departing back, he sneered and said, "So what if you become a basic instructor at the academy? Do you think you can return to your peak?" After saying so, Luo Tiancheng left the area as well, his eyes full of resentment. 2 million credits. He had spent years saving that money. However, when Luo Tiancheng recalled that Shifeng had been kicked out of Shadow like a loser, his mood brightened up a lot. The God's Domain Academy might have access to many real-world resources. It was a different story when it came to God's Domain's resources. Now that Shifeng had no guild backing him, there was no way he could achieve anything in the academy. At night, Wanhao Villa District, inside the top-floor training room of a 3-story villa, Lin Yaoyu wiped the sweat on her forehead and grabbed a bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid from the nearby refrigerator. The way she gulped down the liquid paired with the tight sportswear she wore that outlined her charming figure created a sight that would make any men drool with desire. However, there were no men present in this room. Instead, the only other occupant of this room was a gorgeous woman wearing a short lace dress. Even so, when this woman looked at Lin Yaoyu's attractive figure, she couldn't help but lick the corners of her mouth. "Yaoyu, it seems your combat standard isn't the only thing that has improved a lot in the time we haven't met. That place of yours has developed a lot as well. If young Master Li and the others find out about this, they'll probably become even crazier than before," the woman in the dress said, smiling as she looked at Lin Yaoyu. "Stop teasing me, Yarlin," Lin Yaoyu said as she looked at her best friend, Zhui Yarlin. Then, she curiously asked, "I've been busy with the academy recently. How's the situation in the guild? What else could be going on?" "Everyone's preparing for the War of Worlds expansion pack that's going live tonight," Zhui Yarlin said with a slightly tired look. "I've been busy running around looking for information on this expansion pack recently as well. Is the miniature ancient world described in that new expansion pack that amazing?" Lin Yaoyu asked. The new War of Worlds expansion pack was something announced over a month ago. Once the expansion pack went live, not only would their God's Domain have to fight against another God's Domain, but a miniature ancient world would also come into existence. Meanwhile, according to rumors, this miniature ancient world possessed an environment comparable to that of the ancient God's Domain. Such an environment would be of significant help to the development of players. Hence, many of God's Domain's various powers were thinking of competing for this miniature ancient world. That place is much more amazing than you think. Rumors say that it is the creation of an ancient god and that it is a small part of our God's Domain that was separated during ancient times. If that's the case, there should be plenty of legacies and resources that are only available during ancient times, Zhui Yarlin said, a hint of excitement appearing in her eyes. But according to the information provided on the expansion pack, the rules of this ancient world are a little unique. Only players who have reached level 100, Tier 3 and above are allowed to enter. Moreover, once players enter that world, they will have their progress reset to level 100, Tier 3. Even so, because of the environment and legacies available in there, many Tier 3 and Tier 4 experts are thinking of taking a gamble on that miniature ancient world to try and rectify their lacking foundations. Hasn't the Tier 5 promotion been troubling you? You can consider giving that place a try. I'll consider it. Lin Yaoyu nodded. Her friend's words had piqued her interest. The difficulty of God's Domain's tier promotion increased exponentially with each subsequent tier. Meanwhile, the Tier 5 promotion was akin to a nightmare for Lin Yaoyu. If she could lay herself a better foundation in the miniature ancient world, she would undoubtedly have a much better chance at reaching Tier 5. By the way, I heard that Shadow's ex-guild leader joined your place. What do you think of him? Zhuolinya suddenly asked. Most of our guild's experts are stuck having to defend against the outerworld forces, so we still need many more experts to secure a foothold in the ancient world. Since he is Shadow's ex-guild leader, he should be quite strong. If we can recruit him, it should significantly increase our combat power in the miniature ancient world. That man is indeed capable. He managed to recruit 30 apprentices in the academy within a day, Lin Yaoyu said as she forwarded Shifeng's personal information to Zhuo Yalin. Then, she shook her head and continued, but he is, in the end, only a Tier 3 expert. He is also growing in age. It'll be difficult for him to make any further improvements. Moreover, Shadow is still keeping an eye on him even now. There is also world domination standing behind Shadow. It's best if we give up on him. Is that so? Zhuo Yalin muttered as she read Shifeng's information. Then, after pondering for a moment, she sighed and said, what a pity. With his standards, if he wasn't Shadow's ex-guild leader, he could easily join the middle management of any first-rate guild. Meanwhile, when Lin Yaoyu and Zhuo Yalin were chatting with each other, Shifeng, who was living in a villa located in the distant Blue Bamboo Villa district, laid into his virtual gaming cabin and entered God's domain once more. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EUTL notes. Made an edit to Chapter 4, Realms of Refinement-Refinement Realm. The aerobic exercise Shifeng developed is based on the Refinement Realm's principles only. Principles of the Flowing Water Realm and Void Realm aren't included. Chapter 29-32 Black Flame. Chapter 6, Black Flame. God's Domain was a virtual reality game that had been operating for 10 years already. Since God's Domain's launch, people worldwide have gradually learned to accept this virtual world. By now, God's Domain had already become an integral part of human life, and many people sought to live and rise in this second world. Meanwhile, the flow of time in God's Domain was different than that of the real world. 2 hours in God's Domain was only equivalent to 1 hour in the real world. Hence, one could experience up to 48 hours a day if they spent their entire day in God's Domain. Moreover, God's Domain experienced a standard 30-hour daytime and 18-hour nighttime. One could technically double their lifespan by playing God's Domain. In the blink of an eye, Shifeng found himself arriving in a colorful space-time passage. After walking along this passage for 10 seconds or so, an ancient temple suspended in the starry sky appeared in front of him. Subsequently, Shifeng felt an invisible force carry his body toward the ancient temple that was the size of a mountain. When he arrived before the temple, a female angel with 4 pairs of white wings and clad in a holy dress flew out of the temple and hovered in front of him. Meanwhile, this was a scene Shifeng was incredibly familiar with. This female angel was none other than Gabriel, the angel that would only appear when players first created their character. However, unlike the Gabriel Shifeng had seen when God's Domain had first launched, the Gabriel before him had already undergone significant changes. When God's Domain first launched, Gabriel was only the size of a palm. Now, though, she had a normal person's height. The sacred aura her body exuded had also become much more powerful than before. In front of this angel lord, players would feel as if they were no different than ants. Hello adventurer, welcome to God's Domain. I am the navigation angel, Gabriel. I will be introducing to you the 4 main categories and 12 main classes. Please choose the class that you like most, Gabriel said to Shifeng with a smile on her face. Then, she extended a hand and summoned a list showing the 12 available classes to Shifeng. These 12 main jobs were categorized into 4 main classes: Warrior, Shield Warrior, Guardian Knight, Berserker, Weapons Specialist, Swordsman, Assassin, Ranger, Healer, Cleric, Druid, Oracle, Mage, Elementalist, Summoner, Cursemancer. As this is your second time creating an account and your first account has satisfied the Swordsman class's level 180, Tier 3 condition, if you select the Swordsman class again, you can start as a level 100, Tier 3 Swordsman. If you choose any other class, you will have to start from level 0, Gabriel said after giving an introduction on the 12 main classes. Then, she asked, do you wish to choose the Swordsman class again? I will choose the Swordsman class, Shifeng said in a resolute tone. He had spent a total of 20 years fighting in God's Domain as a swordsman in his 2 lives. He was even the first player to become a Tier 6 god in his second life. Hence, the Swordsman class had already become something inseparable from him. Now that he would be starting another journey in God's Domain, he naturally wouldn't select any other classes. He had already determined himself to reach the apex of God's Domain as a swordsman in this life. He would make up for the regrets he had in this dreamlike world and recover his missing memories. Shifeng felt that the missing part of his memories should be tied to God's domain's existence. Meanwhile, only by reaching the apex again could he potentially recover those memories. Class selection complete, Gabriel said, nodding. Please designate a name for your character. Hearing this, Shifeng pondered for a moment before saying, Black Flame. Black Flame was the pseudonym he had used most of the time in his other life. In that life, Black Flame was also the name of the sword god that everybody in God's domain knew of. Now that he was no longer Shadow's sword magician, he naturally didn't have to continue using his original ID of Yifeng. Naming successful. Do you wish to adjust your appearance? The adjustment rate is limited to 15%, Gabriel added. Shifeng had decided to alter his character's appearance to match the original Black Flame's appearance. Although he couldn't mimic it perfectly due to the limitations imposed, his character still turned out very similar to the Black Flame in his other life. His character looked very close to becoming a middle-aged uncle, and his eyebrows also gave off a strict feeling. Appearance adjustment complete. Please select a birthplace. After confirming Shifeng's appearance adjustment, Gabriel waved her hand again and summoned the complete map of the God's domain continent and the map of an unknown landmass. Then, she said, you are allowed to choose any major city in God's domain as your birthplace because you will be re-entering God's domain as a level 100, Tier 3 player. Apart from the major cities, you can also choose the newly appeared miniature ancient world as your new birthplace. I can start directly in the miniature ancient world. Shifeng was slightly surprised by this revelation. The environment found during the ancient times of God's domain was significantly better than the environment found in modern times. Not only was the mana during ancient times more plentiful, but the mana itself also provided significant help in improving the concentration of players. This, in turn, could increase the success rate of players in completing their tier promotions. After reading about the upcoming expansion pack in God's domain, Shifeng had planned to search for a way to enter this miniature ancient world. Now, it would seem that he didn't need to waste his time doing so. Now that God's domain had already been in operation for a decade, most of the available resource spots and leveling spots in God's domain already had an owner. Unless Shifeng joined one of the major powers, he would have difficulty acquiring any useful resources. Leveling up would become an especially big problem. After all, the prime leveling spots of God's domain were the various guilds' capital to help their new recruits catch up to frontline players as quickly as possible. There was no way these guilds would share their leveling resources with outsiders. If Shifeng couldn't gain access to these prime leveling spots, even if he was a level 100, Tier 3 expert, his leveling speed would be astonishingly slow. It would take ages for him to return to level 200. Meanwhile, the miniature ancient world was a place untouched by God's domain's various powers. It was undoubtedly good news for Shifeng that he could enter the miniature ancient world straight away. After seeing Shifeng remaining unresponsive for some time, Gabriel couldn't help but ask, do you wish to select the miniature ancient world as your birthplace? Yes. Shifeng nodded. Player Black Flame has selected to be born in the miniature ancient world. Initiating teleportation in 5 seconds. I wish you a happy gaming experience. Gabriel nodded to Shifeng before chanting an incantation. 5 seconds later, Shifeng transformed into a streak of white light and disappeared from the space in front of the ancient temple. Then, after an unknown amount of time had passed, Shifeng opened his eyes again and found himself standing in the middle of a majestic city filled with tall buildings. To be precise, he currently stood in the plaza in front of a war god's temple, the bustling plaza filled with tens of thousands of players who had similarly just arrived in the miniature ancient world. 100 Flow City, is it? When Shifeng checked the system map for the city's name, he couldn't help but be astonished by what he saw. According to the map, 100 Flow City measured 40 kilometers from side to side. It was much larger than any main city found on the main continent. Even a Tier 3 player would need to run at full speed for 15 minutes and in a straight line to cross the city. Meanwhile, the mana flowing in the air was simply wonderful. When standing in this mana, Shifeng could feel his mind clearing up to a great extent. Afterward, Shifeng closed the system map and called up his current character's attribute panel. Character: Black Flame, Human, Miniature Ancient World Suppressed State, Affiliated City, 100 Flow City Title, None Class, Swordsman Level, 100 HP, 96,000,096,000 Attack Power, 7,432 Defense, 9,140 Attack Speed, 186 Movement Speed, 450 Attributes, Strength 2050, Agility 1849, Endurance 2100, Intelligence 1670, Vitality 1594. Free Attribute Points, 0 Sword King Class Talent, obtain 30 free attribute points every level. What a ruthless suppression. Shifeng was a little astonished when he saw his statistics. The starting equipment the system provided him was by no means terrible. The system had given him a full set of level 100 secret silver equipment paired with 2 level 100 fine gold ranked longswords. With such equipment, he should have basic attributes rivaling a level 100 High Lord. However, because of the miniature ancient world suppression reducing his attributes, he was only slightly stronger than the average level 100 Lord. With such basic attributes, ordinary experts would need to form parties if they wanted to defeat level 100 Lords efficiently. If an ordinary expert tried soloing a level 100 Lord with so little attack power, it would take them ages to defeat the monster. What gave Shifeng an even larger headache was the state of his mana body. The mana body played a pivotal role in determining a Tier 3 player's strength. The stronger a player's mana body, the stronger their skills and spells would become. Moreover, a strong mana body would also allow players to recover their stamina and concentration much more rapidly. Meanwhile, mana bodies were divided into 4 ranks: bronze, silver, gold, and epic. In his first and current life, Shifeng had only completed a bronze mana body the first time he reached Tier 3. This was also one of the main reasons preventing him from reaching Tier 4. Although the system had directly elevated his new character to Tier 3, his mana body remained at the bronze standard. If he had to rely on such a weak mana body, he would have a much more difficult time getting promoted into higher tiers. Fortunately, this ancient world has a solution to make up for this problem. Otherwise, I'd have no choice but to start over from level 0. The minimum entry condition for the miniature ancient world was level 100, Tier 3. Meanwhile, once players entered the ancient world, their statistics would be forcibly reset to level 100, Tier 3. It didn't matter whether a player was a Tier 4 or Tier 5 expert in the outside world. Despite this being the case, many Tier 4 experts had chosen to enter the miniature ancient world. Meanwhile, one of their reasons for doing so was that this miniature ancient world provided players with a chance to reconstruct their Tier 3 mana body without starting all over from scratch. They would get the opportunity to pave a much sturdier foundation and create a much brighter future for themselves. During the time Shifeng was inspecting his statistics, most of the players who had appeared together with him in the plaza had already left the area. Now, only a few thousand players remained. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. These people sure know how to move quickly. When Shifeng saw the many players rushing toward the city's center, he leisurely made his way out of the plaza and followed after them as well. Every NPC city found in the miniature ancient world housed a special building known as the Colosseum. This was also the only place where Tier 3 players could acquire the opportunity to reconstruct their mana bodies. Chapter 2933 Epic Challenge. Chapter 7 Epic Challenge 100 Flow City, Colosseum. The Colosseum was a massive building that occupied an area spanning 6 sports stadiums and extended over 300 meters into the air. It was without a doubt the most prominent building in 100 Flow City. Just by approaching the Colosseum's metal gates that measured several dozen meters in height, players could feel a strong bloodlust radiating from the building. When Shifeng arrived before the Colosseum, over 200,000 players had already flooded the place. Among these players, only a small part of them were players who had recreated their accounts and entered 100 Flow City, while most of them were players who had teleported from the main continent of God's domain. As Shifeng made his way into the Colosseum, he saw many players hawking their wares by the entrance. Selling 6-piece level 100 dark gold set equipment for cheap. Each set only costs 2,000 gold coins or 200,000 credit. You can use it up to level 120, it is a must-have for new account. Level 150 epic equipment going for only 2,000 gold per piece. Level 150 epic weapons going for only 5,000 gold each. These are must-haves for those challenging the Colosseum. Stock is limited. First come, first served. 6-piece level 120 epic set equipment for only 20,000 gold. 10% off paying by credit. Hundreds of players continuously hawked their wares in front of the Colosseum, adding even more noise and liveliness to the crowded establishment. This was a rare sight in God's domain nowadays. It was as if the game had reverted to its launch day. Only, not many players took these hawking players' offers. Instead, most of them looked at these hawking players in contempt. These merchant players must be insane. Level 150 epic weapons are only going for 2,000 gold outside, yet they're asking for 5,000 gold here. This is daylight robbery. I know, right? Thankfully, I bought myself an 8-piece level 150 epic set equipment before coming here. Also, players can only bring up to 1,000 gold and not a copper more to the miniature ancient world. These people must have lost their minds. 10 years had passed since God's domain launched, and players had already explored over 90% of the game's available maps. Hence, currency in God's domain was no longer in as high demand as it had been initially. At launch, players could exchange 1 copper coin for up to 30 credits. Now, though, one could get 1 gold coin, which was the equivalent of 10,000 copper coins, for just 90 credits. Meanwhile, the exchange rate had remained like this for 2 years without changing. Although the miniature ancient world's release had affected the recent pricing of God's domain's currency, the change wasn't particularly drastic since players could only bring a limited amount of money into the miniature ancient world. Hence, the exchange rate had only gone up from 90 credits to 100 credits per gold coin. Of course, currency wasn't the only thing players were limited to bring into the miniature ancient world. The weapons, equipment, tools, and materials they were allowed to bring were also limited. For example, items at the fragmented legendary rank or above were prohibited, and some powerful epic items were barred. Moreover, players were only allowed to bring up to level 150 epic weapons and equipment. For expert players seeking to explore the miniature ancient world, this was a massive restriction. After all, only items at the fragmented legendary rank or above could allow players to transcend tiers. However, most players entering the miniature ancient world welcomed these restrictions. After all, even in this day and age, the number of players in possession of fragmented legendary items and above was few and far between. Not to mention, over 90% of them were the executives or peak experts of the various guilds. If these players were allowed to bring such powerful items into the miniature ancient world, ordinary experts would stand no chance against them. With these restrictions, though, everyone would have a fairly even starting point since even ordinary experts could get their hands on epic weapons and equipment so long as they were willing to put a few holes into their wallets. Hence, guild experts would no longer have as much of an advantage over independent experts in the miniature ancient world. These restrictions had undoubtedly created an opportunity for many players seeking to explore the miniature ancient world. Meanwhile, Shifeng was also one of the beneficiaries of these limitations. Before returning to God's domain, Shifeng had even thought about selling his mansion to exchange for coins. After all, a 6-piece level 150 epic set equipment alone would cost over 1,000,000 credits. He also had to buy individual epic equipment pieces and epic accessories to fill the rest of his equipment slots. At the end of the day, he was merely a level 100, tier 3 player right now. Even if he had amazing skills, without having a bunch of epic items to support him, he would still have a difficult time getting by in the miniature ancient world, let alone reaching the apex of this world. After looking at the various items the merchant players were selling, Shifeng shook his head and made his way inside the Colosseum. He had to admit that these merchant players were exemplary businessmen. The prices they sold their epic weapons and equipment at were truly reasonable. After all, the prices were only 2 or 3 times higher than those found outside the miniature ancient world. If Shifeng had to rely on these merchant players to fully equip himself in epic items, the credits he currently had on him wouldn't be enough at all. He would have to sell the mansion he had as well. Not to mention, the priority of players who had just entered the miniature ancient world wasn't to spend all of their funds on weapons and equipment. Instead, they needed to spend their money on supportive consumables. In the miniature ancient world, the areas outside of NPC cities were filled with a strange and corrosive energy. So long as players left the protection of NPC cities, this strange energy would immediately start corroding their bodies. Once the corrosion level reached a certain point, not only would players lose stamina and concentration rapidly, but they would even have their basic attributes reduced as well. Eventually, they would even lose their lives to the corrosion. For this reason, players could only spend a very limited amount of time outside of the confines of cities. Meanwhile, players would need to rest inside NPC cities to expel this corrosive energy out of their bodies. And if players wished to expedite this process, they would have to consume expensive foods or potions. In addition to supportive consumables, players also needed to save their money for the crucial services offered in NPC cities, and one of these services was the Colosseum. The process of acquiring the opportunity to reconstruct one's mana body in the Colosseum wasn't free. On the contrary, players had to spend a fortune to acquire this opportunity. The Colosseum was split into 5 floors, with the first floor being used as a reception hall and the second to 5th floors being used for challenges. The challenges were split into 4 ranks, namely bronze, silver, gold, and epic, and each of the 4 floors corresponded to a particular difficulty. The rank of the challenges also corresponded to the rank of the mana body players would get to create. Meanwhile, the cost of the challenges ranged from 10 gold to 500 gold per try. It was undoubtedly an exorbitant expenditure. It should be noted that new characters created in the miniature ancient world were only provided with a starting fund of 1 gold. This wasn't even enough to pay for a bronze challenge. Hence, after entering the Colosseum, Shifeng spent the 2 million credits he won from Luo Tiancheng and bought 20,000 gold from a few merchant players. He would use this money as his starting capital in the miniature ancient world. After acquiring his starting capital, Shifeng headed straight for the 5th floor. The 5th floor only housed a few arenas, and each one was almost the size of 2 football fields. Currently, in one of the few arenas, a player was fighting against 10 8-meter-tall, 4-armed sea giants. The player looked like an infant in front of these sea giants. Moreover, these sea giants possessed a special bloodline, and even the weakest among them was a level 100 Great Lord, while the strongest was a level 100 Grand Lord. There was no doubt that the sea giants had the upper hand when it came to speed and power. So, the player fighting these sea giants dared not confront the sea giants head-on at all. To make matters worse, all 10 sea giants were armed, with some of them wielding shields, some wielding longbows, some wielding spears, and some wielding great swords. They also synchronized their movements with each other, moving as if they were of one body. They attacked the player continuously, giving the player no opportunities to catch his breath. The player would be besieged from all sides should he make even the slightest error while dodging. Eventually, faced with this constant pressure, the player wearing epic set equipment crumbled in less than 20 seconds, his body perishing to an arrow the size of a ballista bolt. That's another one. Isn't the epic challenge's difficulty a little too high? I know that guy, and he's a tier 4 expert who had long since reached the refinement realm already, yet he didn't even last 30 seconds. Can anyone even survive the 1-minute requirement? That's right. Over 100 tier 4 experts have taken the challenge already, yet none managed to succeed. It seems we'll have no choice but to go for the gold challenge instead. A gold mana body is plenty good already. Some tier 5 experts only have silver mana bodies. After seeing one expert after another fail the epic challenge, the thousands of experts present started changing their minds about going for the epic challenge. However, just when some of the experts present were about to leave for the 4th floor, the spectators on the other side of the hall suddenly burst into gasps and cheers, attracting the attention of everyone in the hall. On the other side of the hall, a beautiful woman with her silver hair tied into a ponytail slowly walked out of the arenas there. The woman was clad in seductive black leather armor and wielded 2 crescent scimitars in her hands. As the woman left the arena, the words "Challenge successful" A rank appeared above the arena. What? Someone succeeded? Crap. A rank. She lasted 2 minutes. Who is that person? I know her. She's the first-rate guild Mysterious Moon's Nightingale Zhuo Yalin. She's the vice-commander of Mysterious Moon's 3rd Legion. I heard that she was only half a step away from reaching Tier 5. I didn't think she would come to the miniature ancient world as well. The spectating crowd was in disbelief when they saw the silver-haired woman named Zhuo Yalin completing her challenge. They also couldn't help but grow envious of the woman. After all, her success meant that she had earned an opportunity to construct an epic mana body for herself. For an expert of Zhuo Yalin's caliber, if she could successfully construct an epic mana body, then her future would be limitless. While the spectating crowd discussed Zhuo Yalin's success, several experts from Mysterious Moon excitedly approached the silver-haired woman. "You're amazing," Big Sis Zhuo, a female oracle dressed in white robes, exclaimed as she looked at Zhuo Yalin with sparkling eyes. "You're the first person to ever pass this epic challenge. With this, our guild will become famous in 100 Flow City. It's only the challenge that I completed. It's no big deal. The important part has yet to come," Zhuo Yalin said, smiling while shaking her head. She did not grow prideful over her recent success at all. This was because completing the challenge was only the first step to reconstructing her mana body. The truly difficult part was the actual reconstruction of her mana body. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, despite Zhuo Yalin's words, many of the experts present in the hall still approached her to strike up a conversation and ask for pointers. Everyone present was well aware of the epic challenge's difficulty, and it definitely wasn't as easy as Zhuo Yalin made it out to be. Meanwhile, during the time the many experts were crowding around Zhuo Yalin, Shifeng approached an unoccupied arena in the hall. Each challenge costs 500 gold, the arena's manager, a level 150, Tier 4 NPC, indifferently said to Shifeng. "You will receive varying rewards depending on the evaluation of your challenge. Do you wish to proceed? Here's the money," Shifeng said, nodding. He then handed 500 gold to the manager and walked into the arena. Chapter 29-34 Expert. Chapter 8 Expert. 100 Flow City, Colosseum, one of the epic challenge arenas. Along with her successful challenge, Zhuo Yalin became the topic of discussion for everyone in the Colosseum. Many of the various first-rate guilds' peak experts present also looked at her with envy. Among the crowd in the 5th floor hall, a girl wearing light blue armor and carrying 2 longswords around her waist stared at Zhuo Yalin from a distance. A look of worship on her face, the girl with her hair tied into double ponytails exclaimed, "Big Sis Nightingale is so amazing. As expected of the genius who's on par with our academy's director Lin, now that she has cleared the epic challenge, it seems she's certain to set foot into this year's A-League." In the 10 years God's Domain had been in operation, all sorts of combat tournaments revolving around the game had been created. Among these many tournaments, the Professional League could be considered the most popular tournament. The Professional League was something countless experts aspired to participate in. This was because the Professional League was a place for players to display their skills to the innumerable players of God's Domain. The tournament garnered well over 10 billion spectators each year, and the revenue it generated was astronomical. The Professional League was divided into multiple stages: preliminaries, B-League, A-League, and lastly, the 10 Saints League. Meanwhile, the top 10 winners of the tournament would be officially recognized as the Sacred 10 of God's Domain. Setting aside becoming one of the Sacred 10, anyone capable of setting foot into the A-League would already be considered a peak existence in God's Domain, their names capable of sending tremors throughout the continent. However, after the girl's exclamation, the grey-robed middle-aged man standing beside the girl dismissively said, "You don't need to envy her, Lingling. Setting aside the fact that your sister is also close to reaching the A-League, you yourself possess talent rivaling your sister's. With the Dazzling Wave Workshop's support, it is only a matter of time you enter the A-League as well." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Wu Lingling bitterly smiled and shook her head, saying, "You think too highly of me, Uncle Gan. I'm not even qualified to participate in the Professional League's preliminaries right now, let alone reaching the A-League. You don't need to be so humble, Lingling. When your elder sister first joined the God's Domain Academy, She had to undergo 1 month of training under our vice commander before she managed to reach the middle stage of the trial tower's 5th floor. You, on the other hand, achieved this without receiving such training, Gan Yuan, the middle-aged elementalist, said confidently. Now, you have even become one of Dazzling Wave's seeded talents. Otherwise, the vice commander wouldn't have let me come here in person. This really is a misunderstanding, Uncle Gan. I only managed to reach the 5th floor's middle stage because of Instructor Shi's guidance. Otherwise, I would have needed to train for much longer, Wu Lingling earnestly explained. Originally, she had not been receiving much attention from the Dazzling Wave workshop. Yet, because of her results in the God's Domain Academy's admission test, she had immediately become one of the workshop's seeded talents. The workshop had even officially recruited her as a member and sent Gan Yuan, a Tier 4 expert, to train her. Wu Lingling was naturally happy that a first-rate guild like Dazzling Wave could value her. However, she also knew that her achievements weren't all to her natural talent, but Shifeng's guidance instead. As proof, everyone Shifeng had taught outside the testing hall had made significant improvements. She was merely one out of many. Stop being humble, Lingling. I understand that you place a lot of importance on bonds, Gan Yuan said. The more he looked at Wu Lingling's humble behavior, the more he liked the girl. He had seen many talents in his life, yet almost every one of them had a little arrogance in their behavior. For Wu Lingling to be so well behaved and humble despite being so gifted was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise. Then, Gan Yuan continued, since I've already come here, I'll make sure that Instructor Shi of yours receives plenty of benefits. I heard that Shadow has dismissed him and has even sent some veteran employees to keep an eye on him. He'll probably have a difficult life in the future if this keeps up. However, if I bring it up with Shadow, I believe he'll be fine from now on. As for your future lessons, you just need to follow me in this miniature ancient world. Uncle Yuan, isn't this against the rules? I finally became a student of the academy. I've also apprenticed under Instructor Shi. If I keep training with you, I'm afraid many people in the academy will speak badly of Instructor Shi, Wu Lingling said in disagreement. How about I train under you after I pass the preliminaries, become a professional player, and formally join Dazzling Wave? There were many precedents of the God's Domain Academy students joining a guild while still a student. However, these students would generally only do so after successfully qualifying for the professional league's preliminaries. This was because of the regulations the academy had set up to prevent the various powers from rampantly snatching talents. According to the academy's rules, students would either have to graduate from the academy or qualify for the professional league before joining any guild. Before students met either of these conditions, they would have to study under the academy's instructors. Although many guilds would secretly start to cultivate the talents they prioritized even before these talents met the academy's requirements, these guilds typically did so in secret. If guilds blatantly nurtured their unqualified talents, it would be a huge disrespect to the academy and the instructors involved. Don't worry, Lingling. I came here specifically to talk with that Shifeng. I believe he will be more than happy to cooperate once he hears me out, Gan Yuan confidently said while caressing his goatee. Before meeting up with Wu Lingling, Gan Yuan had already conducted a thorough investigation on Shifeng and found out that the other party was merely the former guild leader of a second-rate guild. Moreover, even at his peak, Shifeng was only a Tier 3 expert who hadn't even reached the refinement realm. He was nothing but an insignificant existence in God's domain. In comparison, Gan Yuan was a Tier 4 refinement realm expert. Any smart person would eagerly try to curry favor with him. This, Wu Lingling was momentarily at a loss for words. Having a Tier 4 refinement realm expert serving as a personal instructor was indeed something many students in the God's Domain Academy looked forward to. However, for some inexplicable reason, Wu Lingling did not think that Shifeng would be in any way inferior to Gan Yuan when it came to instructing students. Unfortunately, Wu Lingling didn't have a say in this matter. Her elder sister, Wu Xiaoxiao, had acquired this opportunity for her and even told her to cherish it. After all, Tier 4 experts were considered mainstays in first-rate guilds, and every one of them was incredibly busy. These experts usually didn't even have time to instruct the guild's new members, let alone provide one-on-one guidance to someone who hadn't even formally joined the guild. Let's stop talking about this, Gan Yuan said, interrupting Wu Lingling's thoughts when she saw the girl's hesitance. By the way, where is that instructor Shi of yours right now? What's his ID? Didn't he say to meet here? I'm not sure. Instructor Shi only said to wait for him in the Colosseum's 5th floor, Wu Lingling said, shaking her head. Then she quickly typed out a message and sent it to Shi Feng, asking for his whereabouts. A moment later, she received a reply and read it. Instructor Shi just replied. His ID is Black Flame, and he says he is preparing to enter Arena number 3. He'll come to meet us once he's done with his challenge. Black Flame? Gan Yuan frowned, feeling dissatisfied with Shi Feng's behavior. Then, he sneered and said, since he's taking the challenge in Arena number 3, we'll meet him there. I also can use this opportunity to see how capable he is. The players in 100 Flow City capable of passing the Colosseum's epic challenge probably numbered only a handful. Shi Feng was nothing but a Tier 3 expert who hadn't reached the refinement realm at his peak. Let alone completing the epic challenge, he would have difficulty even completing the silver challenge. When Gan Yuan and Wu Lingling arrived before Arena No. 3, the challenge in the arena had already begun, and many players in the 5th floor hall had come to watch. There were only 8 arenas in the epic challenge hall, and each challenge cost 500 gold. In a situation where coins were limited, even frontline experts wouldn't recklessly take on the epic challenge. Instead, they would first watch other people take on the epic challenge and learn from their attempts. Along with the start of Shi Feng's challenge, 10 sea giants wearing tattered armor appeared in the bloodstained arena. As soon as these sea giants appeared, they immediately sprung into an attack. 3 bow-wielding sea giants sealed off Shi Feng's escape routes with arrows, 2 shield-bearers charged straight at Shi Feng to force him into revealing weak points, 3 sword-bearers executed a flurry of sword strikes, and 2 spear-bearers waited for an opportunity to strike. The sea giants had distinctly divided their responsibilities, and their movements were in sync with one another. They left no room for their opponent to catch a breather, and their assault was unrelenting. Thanks to Shi Feng, many of the spectating players got to experience the sea giants' accurate and vicious 3-pronged assault once more. What a crazy guy. He came here to take on the challenge right after recreating his account. He didn't even bother getting a single piece of epic equipment. He's probably here to test the waters. Even so, he looks quite skilled. It's been 10 seconds already, yet the sea giants still haven't managed to corner him. I think he won't have any problems lasting 20 or 30 seconds. 30? Are you kidding me? I say he'll last 20 seconds at best. The challenge's difficulty ramps up every 15 seconds. Each of those archers is only firing 2 to 3 arrows at a time right now, but after the 15-second mark, they'll be firing 4 to 5. Although the arrows the sea giants fired would have their power decreased along with the increase of their arrow count, even the weakest arrow carried the power of a level 100 Great Lord. That wasn't something a player without a single piece of epic equipment could receive without flinching. Not to mention, Shi Feng was fully geared in secret silver armor only. If even one of those arrows landed on him, he would be knocked back and have his posture ruined. At that time, he would open himself to the attacks. Gan Yuan also nodded in agreement with the other spectators' comments. Gan Yuan had watched the sea giants' 3-pronged assault many times already, so he knew very well how powerful the group of sea giants was. So long as players allowed themselves to get cornered by the 3 archers, the true nightmare would begin. Meanwhile, when Wu Lingling watched Shi Feng weaving around the stone pillars in the arena while dodging the sea giant's arrows, anxiety overwhelmed her. Shi Feng dodged every arrow only by a hair's breadth. He had evidently reached his limit already. So long as the number of arrows he faced increased by a few, he would certainly die. Subsequently, the seconds ticked by one after another. When the challenge reached the 15-second mark, the 3 bow-wielding sea giants suddenly changed their rhythm. In the blink of an eye, the 3 archers launched a total of 14 arrows from 3 separate directions. Moreover, apart from the arrows, each of the remaining 7 sea giants had also positioned themselves beside a pillar near Shi Feng. So long as Shi Feng dared try to use the pillars to shield himself from the arrows, they would be ready to strike at him. It's over. Gan Yuan smiled as he looked at Shifeng. Wu Lingling, on the other hand, clenched her fists and looked at Shifeng with a heavy gaze. At this moment, even an ordinary expert like her could tell that there was no way Shifeng could dodge those 14 arrows. And even if he desperately evaded himself, 3 or 4 arrows should still strike him. He would need to actively defend himself with his weapon if he wanted to neutralize this threat. However, Shifeng's current equipment was. However, when the 14 arrows were less than 10 yards, Shifeng suddenly switched his footwork, his body's movements accelerating by a large margin. From afar, it looked as if his body had accelerated from rest to lightning speed in an instant, then instantaneously returned to rest once again. Moreover, Shifeng was repeating this cycle one after another. The sight was simply unbelievable. Meanwhile, through this series of stops and movements, Shifeng weaved through the 14 arrows like flowing water, letting none of the arrows hit him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Impossible. What did he do? The spectating players in the arena momentarily fell silent as they stared at Shifeng. The player who said that Shifeng wouldn't last more than 20 seconds before even had his mouth fall wide open. Chapter 29:35 Astonishing Sword. Chapter 9 Astonishing Sword Formless Water. Gan Yuan muttered, his eyes filled with disbelief when he saw Shifeng dodging the arrows in the arena. Formless water? Wu Lingling curiously looked at Gan Yuan when she overheard his mutterings. This was the first time she had heard of the term formless water. Right. This is the rumored formless water. Crap. Who is this guy? Shouldn't formless water be an ultimate move that only geniuses at the flowing water realm can master? Amazing. I only saw this move twice in last year's A-League, but this guy's evasive maneuvers look even more natural than those two people. Could he be some superpowers big shot here to have some fun? Initially, most of the experts present had failed to discern the identity of Shifeng's evasive technique. However, when some of the nearby experts overheard Gan Yuan's mutterings, realization quickly dawned upon them. Simultaneously, they also grew curious to find out Shifeng's identity. Instructor Shi is amazing. Meanwhile, when Wu Lingling overheard the nearby experts' exclamations, excitement filled her heart. She never thought that Shifeng was such a powerful expert. Although Wu Lingling didn't know how amazing the formless water technique was, based on the surrounding experts' comments, the technique was something only experts at the flowing water realm or above could execute. Meanwhile, flowing water realm experts were much more powerful than refinement realm experts. If a flowing water realm expert chose to join a first-rate guild, this person would be given an executive position at the very least. Not to mention, from what she had overheard, not all flowing water realm experts could master the formless water technique. Instead, only experts capable of qualifying for the professional league's A-League could do so. The A-League. That was a realm that her elder sister was constantly seeking to reach. However, even until now, her elder sister was still half a step from reaching it. Yet, now, Shifeng had revealed that he had already reached this realm. Impossible. He is merely the former guild leader of a second-rate guild. There is no way he can master such a profound technique. Gan Yuan instinctively shook his head and denied his conjecture. Then, he said in a determined tone, this must be an advanced combat technique resembling formless water. There is no way it can be the true formless water. 15 seconds. At most, he will deplete his stamina and concentration after 15 seconds from using such a combat technique. Formless water was an ultimate move that tested the level of control players had over their bodies. Only by having superb control over one's body could one execute this technique. However, it was a different story if Shifeng had executed one of the many combat techniques found in God's domain. These in-game combat techniques could allow players to exhibit effects resembling skills and spells or even combat standards of a higher realm. For the average expert, the combat techniques they would typically come across could be categorized into basic and advanced combat techniques. And unlike skills and spells, these combat techniques did not have a cooldown, and neither did they cost any mana to use. Instead, Players only needed to expend a significant amount of their stamina and concentration to use these combat techniques. In the case of combat techniques that could allow their users to exhibit combat standards at the flowing water realm, they were typically considered advanced combat techniques. However, if a Tier 3 player tried using an advanced combat technique, it would place a huge burden on their stamina and concentration. Thus, it was unlikely that Shifeng could continue struggling for much longer. Gan Yuan also dismissed any possibilities of Shifeng executing the actual formless water technique. After all, Shifeng was merely a Tier 3 player who couldn't get promoted to Tier 4 even at his peak. There was no way he could master an ultimate move like formless water. It should be known that flowing water realm experts were existences that even God's domain's various superpowers welcomed with open arms. If Shifeng was a flowing water realm expert, there was no way a second-rate guild like Shadow would dismiss him. An advanced combat technique? Wu Lingling couldn't help but doubt Gan Yuan's explanation. After all, Shifeng's movements were like flowing water as he dodged the sea giant's arrows. Moreover, he showed no signs of exhaustion even until now, so it didn't seem like he was exerting himself when executing those movements. "You'll see soon enough," Gan Yuan confidently said and nodded. In the meantime, Shifeng could be seen moving about the arena like a ghost. Not only did he effortlessly evade the arrows flying toward him, but he also evaded the other sea giant's offensive like flowing water. Moreover, Shifeng would sometimes even use the sea giants charging at him as shields against the incoming arrows, making dodging even easier. Before anyone realized it, 15 seconds had already passed since the challenge had begun. At this point, every expert present in the hall had their eyes focused on Shifeng's movements. During the past 15 seconds, every move Shifeng made was a textbook example. He had dodged every attack sent at him with minimal movement, and he had utilized the surrounding environment to maximize his advantage. How is this possible? Gan Yuan was dumbfounded when he saw that Shifeng showed no signs of tiring. Since Shifeng began his challenge, Gan Yuan counted at least 24 movement techniques. Even a Tier 4 expert would feel tired after using 24 advanced combat techniques consecutively. Yet, Shifeng behaved no differently than when he started his challenge. Before Gan Yuan could recover from his shock, the 10 sea giants in the arena suddenly increased their offensive. Not only did the 3 bowbearers fire 18 arrows simultaneously, but the 3 swordbearers also activated a Tier 3 skill. Tier 3 skill, Spatial Fissure. Immediately, the 3 swordbearers brandished their blades, every swing they executed creating energy blades that reached up to 50 yards away. The energy blades carried so much power that they could even bisect the stone pillars situated around the arena. When the spectating experts saw the storm of energy blades that filled the arena, a grim look appeared on their faces. Thus far, most of the Epic Challenge challengers had failed at this stage. Even someone wielding an epic weapon wouldn't be able to block those energy blades without getting pushed back. To make matters worse, the wide coverage of those energy blades made it incredibly difficult to dodge them. Unless one possessed powerful life-saving skills, one would fall to those energy blades in no time at all. "It seems that person won't last for much longer," Big Sis Zhuo, the female oracle standing beside Zhuo Yalin said, sighing. Although Zhuo Yalin didn't say anything in response, she still silently agreed with her companion's words. Past the 30-second mark, the epic challenge would no longer test the equipment standard of players. Instead, it tested players' mastery over their skills and spells. However, judging by Shifeng's equipment, he was someone who had entered the miniature ancient world by recreating his account. If that was the case, he wouldn't have learned any powerful Tier 3 skills or spells at all. For him to take on the epic challenge in such a state was simply a joke. The next moment, the timer displayed above the arena jumped to its 33rd second. Immediately afterward, an energy blade flew straight at Shifeng, who was in the midst of evading several oncoming arrows. The energy blade left no room for Shifeng to avoid it, and Shifeng's only option was to receive it. It seems this is the end. The spectators shook their heads when they looked at the 10-meter-wide energy blade. Even a Tier 3 berserker fully equipped in epic equipment and wielding an epic weapon would lose 50% of their HP if they received an energy blade with their weapon. If Shifeng tried to receive the energy blade in his Tier 3 starter set, the energy blade would kill him instantly. Just as the energy blade was about to devour Shifeng finally unsheathed the silver sword hanging beside his waist. Then, he brandished the sword against the oncoming energy blade. Break! Shifeng let out a low roar. Immediately, the long sword in his right hand split into 6 afterimages that moved to meet the approaching energy blade. 1 slash, 2 slashes, 3 slashes, 4 slashes, 5 slashes, 6 slashes. The 6 afterimages landed on the same spot one after another. Then, the energy blade miraculously deviated from its original path and flew toward a shield-bearing sea giant. Boom! The energy blade sent the shield-bearing sea giant flying. Meanwhile, Shifeng remained perfectly unharmed. This sudden development silenced the entire hall momentarily, and only after a second had passed did the spectating experts gasp and snap out of their daze. Crap! That's the 6 extreme slashes. He knows how to use Miracle Dragon's trademark move. His 6 extreme slashes look so similar to the real deal. Could he be the sword freak himself? Practically everyone in God's domain knew of Miracle Dragon the sword freak. He was an existence standing at the apex of God's domain. Meanwhile, one of the main contributors to his fame was the technique 6 extreme slashes. Miracle Dragon had defeated countless experts by relying on this move. Who is he? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU at this point, even Gan Yuan, who knew about Shifeng's identity, couldn't help but gasp. The shock he currently felt could no longer be described using words. It was true that Miracle Dragon wasn't the only person in God's domain who could execute the 6 extreme slashes. However, it was also a fact that every person who had mastered this move was an existence capable of shaking God's domain with their name. Before Gan Yuan could recover from his shock, Shifeng continued executing 6 extreme slashes one time after another to deflect the sea giant's attacks. Moreover, he did so until the 1-minute time limit was up. Meanwhile, as soon as the challenge ended, the following words appeared above the arena: "Challenge successful, S-Rank." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,